Welcome to the Reconnection Club podcast, the show that helps parents heal troubled relationships with their adult sons and daughters. I'm your host, psychotherapist Tina Gilbertson. Each week, I'll offer you compassion, clarity, and personal development tips designed to help you reconnect, not only with your child, but with yourself. Now let's get started. You might recall from episode 170 that we have an archive of Q&A call recordings in the Reconnection Club resource library. Today, I'm going to share an excerpt from October 2019 about setting boundaries with estranged adult children. The question on the call was about an estranged adult daughter who lived out of state but would occasionally come to visit. The problem was she would give the parent very little notice, and because this parent traveled a lot, the daughter would sometimes show up when the parent wasn't there and let friends stay over, people the parent didn't know. The parent was uncomfortable with this situation, but the daughter got angry when the parent asked her not to bring guests and also to try to give more notice before visiting. So with that background, the question was, how can you set boundaries and establish rules without an adult child getting mad? I'll play you my answer and then add some general notes about setting boundaries.
You know, I think estranged parents don't realize how relevant boundary issues are between them and their children. So I appreciate your asking about this. I think it's very important that we talk about boundaries because the short answer is I don't think you can set new boundaries with familiar people without getting some pushback. And people are going to be angry. And trying to avoid making people angry is exactly why we end up not setting boundaries that need to be set. It's scary to set boundaries when you know somebody's going to fly off the handle. That's why so many of us, including myself, find boundary setting really hard, very, very challenging. But let's be clear. Your home is your home. You get to make any rules you want for your own comfort. You are allowed. You can insist that no one can enter your home without singing the national anthem first. If that's a boundary that you want to set, you're totally allowed. Of course, some people might decide never to visit because of that, but that doesn't mean you're wrong. It's your home. You make the rules. And if you're not comfortable with strangers staying in your home when you're not around, that sounds like something that any reasonable person would probably understand. But in order to set any boundaries, you really have got to give up the notion that you can do this in such a perfect way that your daughter will say, "Oh, okay, well, thank you for setting that boundary," instead of getting mad. And for everyone listening, I would also say give up the notion that in order to preserve a relationship with your adult child, you must never make them angry. You have to give them everything they want. That is not the case. That's not what the relationship is based on, is you giving them everything they want. It is okay for them to be angry with you sometimes. How you handle their anger is more of a determinant, I think, in whether the situation deteriorates from there. But, you are allowed to set rules for your home, and your daughter is allowed to be annoyed by that. So both are true. She can be mad, and you still get to hold on to those boundaries. And you can be very understanding about it. If you do draw a line, and you can just say, I'm just not comfortable. I'm sorry. You don't have to justify it beyond that. If you're not comfortable with something going on in your home, that is justification enough to draw that line. No one can debate that with you, what you're comfortable with. Now, just one other thing that might be going on that you might need to talk about with her is differing expectations. Like when she comes to stay with you, you would like to be able to spend time with her. That's why you want the notice. You want to be able to maybe take time off if you can. But she may be viewing your home more as a hotel where she gets to stay when she's in town. I don't know. But that's not uncommon for younger adult children. And for many parents, that could definitely lead to resentment. oh, you want to crash here, but you don't want to spend time with us. I mean, it's easy to feel used and resentful. So I think it might be helpful to get clear on whether you have different expectations for her visits or similar expectations. And if this doesn't apply to you, if you kind of know what the expectations are, it may apply to other people who are listening. So I did want to bring that up. But the short answer to how to set boundaries without making your child mad is you can't, but you need to do it anyway. So I would say get very clear before you talk to her on exactly what your boundaries are. And it sounds like you're pretty clear on those already. And then once you are, you just calmly, lovingly, and quietly hold those boundaries with no more explanation or justification than this is what I'm comfortable with. You will get pushback. You already did get an ugly reaction. But under the surface, I think you'll also get respect over time as you consistently and patiently protect your boundaries. It's not offensive for you to protect what's yours. And it's great modeling for your kids, no matter how old they are. Boundary setting is much easier said than done, so I can, recommend doing that, but I can't give you the courage or the will to do it. So I wish you a great deal of luck and fortitude for that.
There's something that I don't think we talk enough about on the subject of boundaries. Before you can set boundaries with anyone, you need to know what your boundaries are exactly. So if you need to set boundaries with someone, maybe don't say anything before taking time to reflect on what it is you need or what exactly your limits are. In other words, before you have a conversation with others about your boundaries, have a conversation with yourself and get clear on where the boundaries are. Another point that's often forgotten or that people don't realize is that even when boundaries are appropriate and reasonable, people can still get angry, including already estranged adult children. Now, of course, that feels dangerous. You don't want to introduce conflict into an already tense relationship. But in the long run, your relationship cannot require you to give up having boundaries. You don't have to allow yourself to be walked all over in service of having a relationship at all. In my opinion, that is not a viable solution to estrangement. It's not even what most adult children want. You can be a kind and understanding parent without allowing your personal boundaries to be violated, let alone repeatedly. It's really okay for adult children, even estranged ones, to get angry or frustrated when you hold reasonable personal boundaries. Anger and frustration are natural when desires are thwarted, and those emotions are temporary. But if you want to be able to have boundaries in that relationship, then what matters is that when anger and frustration blow over, your boundaries are still intact. The truth of the matter is, and I'll include myself here, some people will only respect us when we require them to. Unfortunately, it's no one else's job to respect our personal limits. It's up to us to respect ourselves enough to protect our boundaries with consistent, predictable consequences for violations. We can complain all day long that people aren't respecting our boundaries, even though we ask them nicely and we think they should if they care about us. If we don't respond consistently with consequences, we can't expect anyone, even loved ones, to take our boundaries seriously, especially if our limits are inconvenient for them. It's just human nature. We look for the easiest path. In my book, nothing about boundaries is easy. If you manage to set boundaries with adult children calmly and consistently, you might not get a medal, even though I think you should because of how incredibly hard that is. But if you stay the course to the best of your ability, the fact that you're acting with integrity in protecting appropriate, reasonable boundaries might eventually earn you more respect. Until next time, remember that you are a loving, lovable, and still growing human being. So please take good care of yourself. Bye for now. If you've enjoyed this episode of the Reconnection Club podcast, I invite you to check out ReconnectionClub.com. The Reconnection Club is for parents at any stage of estrangement from their adult, child, or children. So whether you've just realized there's trouble between you, you've been living with estrangement for years, or you're newly reconciled but still walking on eggshells, the Reconnection Club is your essential resource for information, support, and continued personal growth. With our courses and workshops, expert interviews, monthly Q&A calls, and a friendly, active community, the Reconnection Club is a wonderful place to be for anyone suffering the pain of estrangement from an adult, child, or children. So check it out at ReconnectionClub.com.